Hi there, students. Kernel, a kernel with a K. Don't confuse this with kernel with a C, although the pronunciation is identical. Colonel with a C is a rank in the army. This is above lieutenant colonel and below brigadier. The pronunciation is identical, but the meaning is totally different. So, a kernel. A kernel is the central part of a nut. The part that's inside the shell and the part that you can eat. So you've got a nut and you have to break the shell and you open it, and inside there is the kernel, which is the bit that you can eat. Okay, so the kernel of a nut. They also use this word, a kernel, to talk about a seed of corn. You know the seed of corn, the corn that we eat. Well, each individual piece is called a kernel as well, okay? But the kernel of a nut. And then we use this word kernel, the center of a nut, we use this figuratively to talk about the most important part of something, the central part of it. So there is a kernel of truth in what he has said. Okay, so if there's a kernel of truth in something, there is a core accuracy at the heart of what they say, but it's got all sorts of other dubious bits, other exaggerations, etc. So there is a kernel of truth in the story, but there are many additions, embellishments and exaggerations. A center, the kernel of something, the kernel of an operating system. This is the center part of it, the core part of it, the center itself. So kernel, the central most important part of it. The kernel of his beliefs is based on religion, for example. The kernel, the center of something, the main part. Okay, so the kernel, the soft edible part of a nut, of a seed, or when you have something like a peach, it has a stone in the center. If you open that, there's a seed or a grain in the center. But then we use this word kernel to talk about the central part of something, the essence, the core, the quintessence, the center of it. Okay, and then in computing, the most basic level, the very center, the core of an operating system in computers. So, so the kernel with a C, same sound, but don't confuse it. The military rank, but this is kernel with a K, the inner part of a seed, of a nut, a piece of corn, or the central, essential part of something, the germ of something. So most stereotypes certainly create consist of a kernel of truth, a central part that is true. This book is quite boring, but the kernel of the book talks about our society. Okay, so a kernel of truth, a small element, is a very common collocation. The kernel of your defense is as such. The kernel of the problem is a lack of money. The kernel of your existence is your love for life. Okay, so a kernel. the central part, the most important part, but particularly this collocation, a kernel of truth. So kernel, formality. 5.5 informality, use it absolutely anywhere. And this comes from Proto-Germanic kurna, talking about a seed, a grain, or corn. So corn, kernel. Clearly these two words are linked. It's also a cognate of the Yiddish word kernel as well. So corn, kernel, it's the same thing. So enough. If you enjoyed the video, give it a rating, subscribe to my channel, and I will see you soon. Bye for now. Kernel with a K, not kernel with a C.